Welcome to the 245th anniversary commemoration of the Battle of Fort San Carlos. You'll hear more about that later in the program, but we want to also express our thanks to the good folks of St. Genevieve. Some of us I know have come a long way here, and it's a wonderful place to be. You'll see some good hospitality, good restaurants. I know several of us stayed in some very nice bed and breakfast here in town. So enjoy the town, and hopefully you'll be back in years to come too. If you haven't signed up yet, if you're an SAR, I know we had the pre-registration online, but we need to know you're actually here today. So we had the Ladies Auxiliary at the door where you come in. Be sure that they know that you're here today and put a check mark there by your name. They also have commemorative coins, challenge coins, and medals. And there are additional medals up here to the left of the stage from the ladies group. So again, I want to thank the Ladies Auxiliary for helping out. And with that, we'll go ahead and start with the invocation. James?
Dear friends, can you hear me? Oh. Dear friends, please assume a posture of reverence. Let us invoke the blessings of the Creator of our world and ask for His guidance and grace in our efforts today. Grace in the understanding of the men we commemorate and the sacrifices and the challenges that they faced. Let us remember what they did and why they did it, so that in our daily lives we can also face our own challenges and our own opportunities to make the world a better place. Grant your grace to us to do well today in our efforts. Amen.
Well, what's your command? Advance, get it under your command. Police, c'est je vais up. Debout. Police, à bout poste. Hold on! Again! Halt! Draw! Sword! Left shoulder! Throw up! Carry! Color! Mark time! Mark! Forward! Mark! Present! Forward! Present! Color! Please join me in singing the national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and the bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets of red and glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, sing us that star-spangled banner yet wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Please join me in the pledge of our national flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order! Color! The main group, carry, colors, right about face! Right about face! Prepare to pose! Pose, colors! To the march, face! March time, march! March! March!
How about a hand for the color guard and the police? Wasn't that great? Moving along in our program, I'd like to ask the president of the Allen Laws Oliver chapter and Mosar second vice president, Matt Toinzensketter, to come up front and read the first honored patriot biography.
Good afternoon. Today I will be reading about Lardner Clark. Born November 1st, 1756 in Gloucester, New Jersey, Lardner Clark served in Captain Wilkinson's company, 4th Battalion, Philadelphia City Military. After the war, Clark was a merchant in Philadelphia. He eventually moved to Nashville, Tennessee, where he became one of the first merchants in that city. Around 1798, he relocated to Kaskaskia, Illinois, an American town just across the Mississippi River from St. Genevieve. Lardner Clark has previously been recognized as a patriot by the Daughters of the American Revolution, patriot number A203127. Lardner Clark died in February 1801 on the Saline River near St. Genevieve. Then in Spanish-controlled Upper Louisiana, he was buried on February 18th in the cemetery of the parish of St. Genevieve, now called Memorial Cemetery. There is no tombstone to mark his gravesite.
Thank you, Matt. And now I would like to ask the president of the Ozark Patriots chapter, Dr. Brad Frazier, to come forward and read about Jean-Baptiste Janisse.
Bonjour mes amis français, américains et espagnols. Je m'appelle Dr. Brad Frazier. Jean-Baptiste was born September 17th, 1759 in Kaskaskia, then part of Nouvelle-France. His father, Nicholas Genet, was captain of the first company under Commandant Richard Winston. His son, Jean-Baptiste, served as an ensign in the second company under the command of Captain Joseph Duplessis. Nicolas Calaudet Lachance, a 2023 honored St. Genevieve Patriot, also served in this same company. In 1781, Jean-Baptiste married Marie Raine Barbeau, the daughter of the captain of the militia of Prairie de Rocher. After 1794, Jean-Baptiste moved across the Mississippi to then Spanish-controlled district of St. Genevieve in Upper Louisiana. His property was located along present-day St. Mary's Road, facing the agricultural land known as Le Jean Champ. Jean-Baptiste Genet was buried on October 22, 1836, in an unmarked grave in St. Genevieve's Memorial Cemetery.
Thank you, Doctor. Now I would like to ask the Spirit of St. Louis. He's held many roles there. He is also the Mosar State Treasurer, John Bedell, to come forward and read the biography about John Dodge.
John Dodge, born July 12, 1751 in Colchester, Connecticut. He came west as a trader in 1770 and settled in the Wyandotte villages near Sandusky, Ohio, where he acquired influence over the natives. At the outbreak of the Revolution, he sympathized with the states and was influential in securing native neutrality. By request, he attended the Pittsburgh Treaty of 1775. Early in 1776, he was arrested by Governor Hamilton and imprisoned, first in Detroit and then in Quebec. He escaped in 1778 and called on Jefferson, who appointed him Commissioner of Indian Affairs in the Illinois country. He also served as an agent to the state of Virginia at Fort Jefferson at the mouth of the Ohio River. By 1782, he held the fort that dominated the Kaskaskia and was listed as a captain of the infantry. Around 1787, he moved to the St. Genevieve on the Spanish side of the Mississippi, where he resided until his death. John Dodge was the brother of Israel Dodge, an American patriot honored at the 2024 Remembrance Day. Dodge was buried in St. Genevieve's Memorial Cemetery on April 18, 1795. No tombstone marks his gravesite.
Thank you, John. And now I would like to ask Keith Morris of the Fernando de Leyva chapter to come forward. Some of you may know that Fernando de Leyva was the commander at Fort San Carlos in St. Louis, and we have a SAR chapter named after Fernando de Leyva. Keith?
Good afternoon. It is my privilege today to introduce you to Jean-Baptiste Bequet. Jean-Baptiste Bequet was born circa 1751 in Cahokia, Pays d'Illinois in Nouvelle-France. Jean-Baptiste Baptiste is listed on the November 1779 roster of the St. Genevieve Malay, who, as born in Illinois County, and is serving as a habitant or a farmer by occupation. Beckett answered the call to arms as one of the 60 Malaysians who went from St. Genevieve to St. Louis and helped successfully defend that village on May 26, 1780, against the British attack, which is now known as the Battle of Fort St. Carlos. Jean Beckett remained in St. Louis until the contingent returned to St. Genevieve in September of 1780. He died in St. Genevieve at the age of 66 and was buried on April 11th, 1817 in Memorial Cemetery in an unmarked grave.
Thank you, Keith. And now for the fifth and final reading of our Patriot biographies, I'd like to ask the Spirit of St. Louis chapter president and Mosar first vice president, Doug Anderson, to come forward.
Joseph Vital Saint Jim de Beauvais, more commonly known as Vital Saint Jim Beauvais, was born in 1738 at Kaskaskia, Nouvelle-France, to Jean-Baptiste Beauvais and Marie-Louise Lacroix, both born in Montreal, Nouvelle-France. In 1775, Vital married Mon Félicité Jani, daughter of Patriot Nicholas Jani, who is DAR Patriot number A061745. After the American George Rogers Clark captured Kaskaskia on July 4, 1778, Vital Beauvais, a French-descended British resident of Kaskaskia, furnished flour to George Rogers Clark and his Virginian army. Beauvais furnished 5,000 pounds of flour, which was approximately 10% of all the flour furnished. He is recognized as a patriot of the American Revolution for his support of George Rogers Clark and his troops during the Revolutionary conflict in the West. Beauvais moved across the Mississippi to St. Genevieve after 1786, after having served as a magistrate, judge, and syndic of the fence at Kaskaskia. Vital Beauvais has previously been recognized as a patriot by the Daughters of the American Revolution, DR Patriot A008221. Vital Saint Jim de Beauvais died November 9, 1816 at St. Genevieve and is buried in the Memorial Cemetery in a grave marked with a tombstone.
Thank you, Doug. And now, Robert Mueller, the past president of the Foundation for Restoration of St. Genevieve, would like to read Why We Remember.
We come here today to honor the memory of American Revolutionary patriots buried in this historic town. These men were not famous military officers, persons whose exploits are memorialized in a poem like that of Paul Revere, or remembered for a famous quote like "Give me liberty" or "Give me death." No, these were simple people, eking out a living on the frontier. They were voyageurs, hunters, day workers, who answered the call to successfully defend St. Louis against a British attack in May 1780. They were farmers who provided grain to George Rogers Clark during his time of his successful attack at Vincennes. One was a merchant who served during the war in the East, and another who served as a local government leader in Kaskaskia after its capture by the Americans. For many of those 60 St. Genevieve Malays who went to defend St. Louis, we know not their final resting places. Our church and civil records from that era do not contain references to them, nor do we even know the names of the 5 Spanish soldiers who accompanied them to the defense of the frontier. Few were married at the time of the battle and have left no descendants to mourn their passing, honor their patriotism, or perpetuate the worth of their lives. Today's ceremony honored certain known patriots buried in Memorial Cemetery. But in a way, we also are here to honor those St. Genevieve patriots for whom a final burial place is unknown. We gathered here on this day of remembrance in payment of a debt to these individuals, both known and unknown, a debt passed down to us over the years. As we leave this solemn ceremony, let us commit ourselves to pass down the ownership of this debt to those who come after us. The St. Genevieve Augustus St. Gem memorialized this commitment 125 years ago this year at a meeting of the St. Genevieve Grand Army of the Republic Post 326 when he spoke. It will be for our children and grandchildren keep green the memory of their ancestors who saved to them and this world the blessing of the grandest government God had ever conceived in the mind of men. May our grandchildren carry our patriots' deeds into the 21st century, and may their children, their grandchildren, and their great-grandchildren perpetuate them in all future centuries. On behalf of the citizens of St. Genevieve, I thank the Sons of the American Revolution for their honoring our patriots and for reminding us of the debt we owe, for without these patriots, we would not be the land of the free. Thank you.
That was wonderful, Bob. Thank you. We've had to make a few changes to the programs that you all hold because of the weather and all, so there won't be any of the musket salutes today. I'm going to next ask James Osborne, who is of the Spirit of St. Louis chapter, and he's also the National South Central District Vice President General, to come up and lead the benediction. Afterward, Jean Henry will come up and lead the America the Beautiful. Jean is a member of the Martin Warren chapter and a past MOSAR president. And then I will ask Margaret Carr to come forward and tell us about the battle. James?
A benediction, the speaking of good words. In our prayerful thoughts, as we bring to conclusion the many good words we have already heard, let me re-emphasize the one note that I think is important. In this year when Lexington and Concord marks the beginning, we also celebrate the Battle of Fort San Carlos, which marks the end. Knowing the history of our independence and how those foundational words of our declaration document have been carried in our hearts continuously until this time is through parents talking to their children and their grandchildren. Just as we remember those men and women who came before us, let us turn and teach our children well. Amen.
Would you please join me in singing America the Beautiful? You can rise if you wish, or remain seated. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesty, above the fruited plains. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea.
I want to talk to you just a little bit about the Battle of Fort San Carlos. This was a battle that happened on May 26, 1780, down on our arch grounds in St. Louis, Missouri. And so many people have said to me, I don't know what you're talking about. It couldn't possibly have had a Revolutionary War battle that far out west. So I've spent at least 30 years of my life trying to convince people that it did happen. When the United States started their war against Britain, Britain decided up in Canada that they wanted to control the entire Mississippi River all the way down to New Orleans. There really aren't a whole lot of people in that area. St. Louis at the time of the battle had around 700 people living there. That's men, women, and children. It is not big. But in March of 1780, George Rogers Clark showed up at St. Louis's doorstep with Fernando de Leyva, the Spanish commandant, because France had given this whole area west of the Mississippi to Spain in a secret treaty. And he basically said, the British are coming. You better do something to protect this very unfortified town. So Fernando de Leyva, in 2 months' time, using a lot of his own money, built one stone tower, and where it stood was at 4th and Walnut. If you know St. Louis and you know where the old courthouse is, it would be directly in front of it. So he built one stone tower and managed to dig trenches going all the way from the Mississippi River all the way up to where the old courthouse is today. That's quite a bit of digging with so few people. So it became a fortified town when St. Charles or San Carlos sent 5 cannon to be put in the top of that tower. Also, St. Genevieve sent 60 men under the command of Francois Vallée, the son, fils, to also help fight. De Leyva was trying to get as many people as he could to support this area. And in the afternoon of May 26th of 1780, well, the day before, the Native Americans had come close enough that they could have killed people out in the fields. But they thought, oh, this is not a problem. We'll divide into 2 groups. Half went over to Cahokia, where George Rogers Clark was. Half came to St. Louis. So they were already divided in half. On the afternoon of May 26, about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, came the attack. The Native Americans did not like a fortified tower. They called them houses of thunder. They were not expecting any kind of resistance from St. Louis. So within 2 hours' time, we're going to a little bit honor the people we know who died that day. About 22 people were killed. At the same time, over in Cahokia, half of them had gone across over there. If you've ever been to the town of Cahokia and seen the church there, the Church of the Holy Family, George Rogers Clark came out by himself and said, "Why are you here?" And they said, "We've come in peace." He said, "No, you haven't. You've come across the water, the river, you're wet." But then they opened the doors of the church, and out came George Rogers Clark's men. We won both places that day. And this is extremely important that we won, because the Canadian border was supposed to come down to St. Louis. If they had won, if the British had won that day, Thomas Jefferson would not have been able to purchase the Louisiana Purchase from France. Also, when we came up to the War of 1812, we would have had to fight the British from our west as well. So it's extremely important. It is a small battle. I am delighted to see all of you here today. I really, really appreciate this. This is a passion of mine. I had no one at the battle. I just became interested in it. So thank you. Again, I want to welcome all of you. This is the 245th anniversary of the Battle of Fort San Carlos, which occurred May 26th of 1780. Do you want to do your pledge first?
No, the Star Spangled Banner.
Okay. I'd like you to lead the Star Spangled Banner. Would you all rise, please?
Let us retrieve colors first.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have to retrieve the colors. My mistake.
Right about faces. Stand. Fire locks.
Okay.
Prepare to retrieve. Retrieve colors. Right about face. Present colors.
Wait. Just a minute.
National anthem should be first, and then pledge allegiance.
Okay. Hey, go ahead and have your
Go
ladies.
ahead. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Salute. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Color bearer. Order. Colors. All the way to the ground. Stay position. Right about face. Prepare to post. Post. Colors. Left shoulder. Fire locks. To the march. Face. March time. March. Forward. March.
Please join me in the SIR pledge, which is in your program if you follow along. We, descendants of the heroes of the American Revolution, who by their sacrifices established the United States of America, reaffirm our faith in the principles of liberty and our constitutional republic, and solemnly pledge ourselves to defend them against every foe.
Thank you, Ken. And now I'd like to ask Jeff with the Milice to come forward. He's the executive director of the French Colonial America. He has a wonderful museum here in St. Genevieve, so if you get a chance to go by there, Jeff will have some remarks for us. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here on behalf of not just French colonial America, but all of the residents, the administrative folks, the different historical entities that we have here, that we all cooperate and collaborate in telling these important stories. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. We also really appreciate Margaret's efforts and her committee. And could I ask you one more time, please give Margaret a round of applause. And now with the involvement of SAR, DAR, other entities, the Milice, all these folks are getting together to help call attention to the importance of this story. We're doing something really remarkable here. And Margaret already explained about the nature of the battle. She already talked about the very specific historical geopolitical impact of this event. But there's something else to this. A great many of us at various times in our lives have had experiences where you've been unexpectedly in some really bad situations. Well, being invaded by about 1,300 British and their Native American allies who want to take over the area where you're living, that's a pretty bad situation. But the thing about these kinds of situations that we can all take inspiration from is these are situations that bring out the best in people. Not everyone, not all the time, but you do see the best in people brought out by some very bad things. Please keep that in mind. Please, especially as you know, life is extremely complicated these days. The world is a place where interesting things are happening more and more. Remember that these things can help bring out the best in us. Thank you again, and we'll look forward to seeing you in future years here in St. Genevieve.
Thank you, Jeff. If you have not gone over to the center, please do so. We have a museum to the battle there, and it's very well done. Eventually, it's going to have a permanent location at the Francois Valley home once it gets completed. The next thing I would like to lead, and I want to do this slowly because I want to read about the people the purpose of this celebration today is to remember those who died at the battle. This year, as a very special thing, the DAR ladies who have the roses are going to each have an SAR person escort them. And it's going to come down in the middle here. So if you've got a rose, you can stand up and you'll be joined by an SAR person, a man, I don't know all of your names, and I will read very slowly the names of the people who died. Let us start. Juan Coleman was from Germany per a 1776 census. Can't even talk. Census. Just take your time. The vase is right there. Tomas Possibly Thomas Tyler, a farmer from America, or he could have been Thomas Blondeau, a trader from Canada per 1776. Autre que Siheo, which literally means another one who was there. Ignacio La Rosa, from Fort Chart for the 1776 census and the 1779 St. Louis Cavalry militia list. San Juan or Saint Jean, possibly Paul Saint Jean, a member of the St. Genevieve militia and originally from Canada per the 1779 St. Genevieve militia list. San Jorge, member of the St. Louis militia during the 1779 St. Louis infantry militia list. Bisset, Charles Bisset, a merchant from Canada, or he could have been Carlos Bizet, a farmer from Canada. Calvé Hijo, a son possibly of Joseph or Antonio Calvé, both of whom had a son. Local legend says it was Joseph Calvé Jr. on the militia list. Pedro de Hetra, possibly Pierre de Chartres, Pierre Picot, we don't know, or McDermott. Dubancourt Barroso, a rower from Canada. Francisco Hubert, a farmer from Fort Chart per the 1776 census. Glade, Pierre Gladue, farmer from Canada. Amable Guion, 1779 St. Louis infantry militia list. Rel, Antoine Real, merchant from France. Marie Cardinal, on the prisoner list, but died trying to escape. A slave of Allah Pierre. Two slaves of Sierra Gabrielle Serret. A slave of Madame Choteau. A slave of Bonnet. A slave of Louis Sanselier. A slave of Pierre Picot de Belestre. I always remember Fernando de Leyva. He died a month later, and it was buried in the church. And the other rows, I think there's one left, is for anyone that we do not know that may have been missing in action. I don't know if you have noticed, but there are these beautiful soldier dolls here. What we are trying to do is try to remember all of these people. Some of them actually have tags on them, which identify them as one of the people who have died. And if you'd like to take a closer look, that is fine. And before we do Amazing Grace, I'd like to thank everyone, if you'd like to stand, who's responsible for all these beautiful wreaths. If you brought a wreath with you, would you please stand and you can sort of tell us who, Carol, yours is for?
The St. Genevieve Settlement Chapter, DAR.
Okay. What about the men's groups? Or any of those for yours? Mine is this one. This represents the commemoration for the Battle of Fort San Carlos, of which I'm president.
William C. Coram Chapter in Liberty, Missouri.
Thank you.
Charles Robinson Chapter in Lawrence, Kansas.
And Lorraine Clark Chapter, Columbia, Missouri.
Thank you.
Alexander Majors Chapter in Kansas City.
Thank you.
Ozark Mountain Chapter, St. Joseph.
Thank you.
Ozark Mountain Chapter, Springfield, Missouri.
Thank you.
Monticello Chapter, Shawnee, Kansas.
Thank you.
Athens Chapter, Georgia Society.
Thank you.
William Benke, Indiana Society.
Joyce Benke, Indiana Ladies Auxiliary.
Thank you.
Omaha Chapter, Nebraska Society.
Chapter, West Plains, Missouri.
Thank you.
Kansas Society, yes they are.
Is there anyone else? I would like go ahead. I would like Alta Bonk to stand from my John Sappington chapter in SDAR. She is responsible for some of the issues. Thank you. Wayne, we would like you to play Amazing Grace, please. I don't know if anyone is here today who is a descendant of anyone who fought at the battle. If you if you are a descendant, could you please raise your hand and tell us who you are descended from? Yes.
Jockton Bay.
Okay.
I actually have three, Francois Valley Perry, and his son Francois Valley II, as well as John Baptiste St. Jean Beauvais.
Thank you. I mean, not just who might have been killed in the battle, but were there. I have to start saying the daughters to sing
In the back.
So, but I can't see very well.
Joseph Chancelier.
Thank you. Anybody else see somebody that might have a hand up? Okay, it's Justin.
God bless America, land that I love, stand beside
That was beautiful. Thank you, ladies. And now I'd like to ask my co-chairman, Ken Lawrence, to come forward. And we're going to present some awards to folks here. You can imagine this is a big effort to have all these groups and a fine place like this. So the first award we'd like to give is to the owner of the Oris Theater. He really came through and saved us, and we thank Dick Grimminger if you come forward and receive an award. See you again next year.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Sure, thank you.
And next is Jeff. Straighten it up in a moment. Jeff, who you heard speak earlier, we have something for you, Jeff. If you'd come forward, please. Next, we have Bob Mueller, who's already up on stage here. You heard from Bob earlier. Thank you for all you do, Bob.
Thank you guys.
In the middle. And now, the wonderful Margaret Carr. I'd like to honor you, Margaret. Thank
That
you.
is so nice. Thank you so much.
And I think Margaret has some announcements about next year's celebration.
Take that for you.
Well, that's something, really, thank you very much. It's a labor of love for me. It just has been for many, many years. Okay, what I would like to announce is that next year, we're going to have our commemoration down here in St. Genevieve on May 30th and 31st. Because of the efforts of Jeff, we have received $23,000 from the Missouri Council for the Humanities to put on a very nice event next year, hopefully not raining, so we can do this in the cemetery as well. If you want any of the Fort San Carlos medals, a nice young man over there named Jackson is selling them for me. So if you want them, I do have them. Please come next year. We haven't quite planned it yet, but I'm sure it'll be beautiful. So thank you. No, you want me to do this? Okay.
And for the recessional and retrieval of colors, I'll read the SAR recessional. Please join in with me. Until we meet again, let us remember our obligations to our forefathers. Commander?
Hey! Yeah! Militia commander, on your command. Police, say command. There they go. The boot. What? Keep. 1, 2, 5, 7. And a march. March the conversion of goes. March. Release! I move post! Hey! Over in the wrong. Go guard! Okay. Hot!
left, shoulder, firelock, draw, sword, mark time, mark, boys, mark. Militia, left, face. Present firelock, column bearers, right, face. Prepare to retreat. Retreat, colors. Left, face. To the march, face. Mark time, mark. Point, colors. Forward, march. All right, up, left, face. Order, colors. Order, balance. Salgado, guest fix. All guard, right.